So I hope everybody's having a good evening. Yeah, another couple of minutes, we'll get started. Yeah, we got one more. And about a minute start, and then we'll get the ball rolling here. Excuse me. All righty, let's get things rolling here. Hopefully everybody can hear me fine. And you should be seeing my screen. Excellent. Thank you for letting me know. That's one of the downsides of teaching online. You're not always sure. In class, when they look at you funny, like you're not saying anything, you know you're not speaking loud enough, or they start going, doesn't work online so well. Anyway, we're starting the internship simulator this week. It's going to be a sequence of basically 4 projects, which I believe you got an introduction to Jira yesterday. But the long and short of it is we're trying to simulate what's actually going to happen on the job and have some realistic problems that you might see on the job or some variation thereof. To reiterate, when you get the tickets assigned to you in Jira, if you believe you've got the answer and you've got it documented, then you move it over to review and assign it to me, so I get a notification, and then I will check it out in a timely fashion. If I can do it within 24 hours, I will. but weekends I may be a little slow, but we'll get feedback turn around. If it's acceptable, then I will move it to done, and on to the next thing. If there's something wrong with it or something's not quite right, then I will document put back. Now, if you have a question specific to the problem, you can put the questions in there and then assign it to me for review. But I would recommend also, reaching out to your support, because you can call them, whereas during the day I have a day job, and evenings I have a number of things with my wife. I'm looking for a new car right now, so that's taking quite a bit of time. For those of you who don't know, about 3 weeks ago, about that, we had a hailstorm come through Allen, and the insurance company decided to total my car. So I'm getting a new car. Don't know what yet. So when I get it, I'll let you know. But anyway, for the first ticket, for the first week, we're first project we're going to look at. Well, here's me. Yeah, although I've already met many of you already in the last class, but yeah, I've been around the block a few times. I've seen a few problems, and I helped rework some of these assignments. And like I said, these are something we're trying to be a real world problem, but not so far out that you're going to get stuck. When you get 30 plus years down the road, like I have, you'll get nice vague ones that basically say, we need to deploy this application. Nobody has a clue. Good luck. But that's further down the road. So you'll have, hopefully a little bit more experience before you get to that point. So what we're doing is we're installing a new server. In this case, it's going to be a web server. And we're going to have a number of things we're going to look at. So for your project, you're going to basically start up a Google Cloud instance, so another virtual machine. You're going to want to create a user, SysEng, and you're going to have the web server that you install, probably Apache. It's the one I recommend. It's the most straightforward for this purpose. To run as that user instead of as the normal HTTP or Apache user, and of course show some relevant information to show that the web server is running and can be reached, and all of those fun things. So what are we going to do? Well, got a little more detail than we had a moment ago. You need to install the web server. Basically, treat it as, like it says here, you're installing a new web server for your company's new application. We're not worried about the application in this case, just the web server needs to be there, because you'll see in a lot of cases, you'll have a long-term project, and it'll be done in steps according to who's responsible for what. So for someone who's a systems engineer or systems administrator, they may have you install a web server, a Linux server, do all the appropriate configuration for the machine. So we're not talking the web server yet, just the machine. Do any hardening that security requests. We're not going to do that, but kind of give you the feel of what we're looking at. And then you'll start installing some basic services. So for this application, we need a web server. For other applications, it may be a web server in a database, or just a database, or depending on what's needed. So we'll be installing the web server. And when we do, we want to change it so it runs as a different user. In this case, SysEng, which the user we're going to create, so that it runs as a different user than normal. Why would you do this? Sometimes security requires it. If everybody knows we're running as Apache 2 or Apache or www-data, that's information that's out on the internet that people know that they can use to attempt to attack the account. So we've decided we'll use SysEng. So, and then we can also do things where this user has much more lockdown permissions than might normally be. Then we're going to create a web page that's going to pretty much just list the host name of the machine, the IP address, the kernel information onto the web, onto the internet. So we should be able to hit it with a browser. And then what we have is, basically, yes, the web server is working. And when you guys get around to installing the application, we're good to go. So why are we doing this? Well, again, we're working on something, trying to give a problem that would be comparable to something you'd see in the real world without making it over complex today. Get your feet wet here and get you moving. So that you have some practical experience to build upon. I could, say, I need you to install this web application that needs, 2 different databases and memcache, and we don't want that at this stage. One step at a time. So focus on this practical application here. Sometimes it doesn't go smooth. We're not throwing any curves here, but sometimes when you install things, either you don't do something quite right, or when you update the configuration file for SysEng, you put a typo in it and it doesn't want to start right now. So sometimes you'll run into these problems, and troubleshooting is going to be an essential tool in this field. The technologies for me in 30 years, you can guess, have changed dramatically. The operating systems I started with mostly pretty much don't exist. There's 1 or 2 that have variations of it now, but still, they mostly don't exist what I learned originally. The only thing I have is I can solve a problem, and I can keep solving a problem. So that's what we're looking at building. And, look at what you need to do to document this. So you're going to want to you need a script? Do you need just documentation? These are the sequence of things we need to do, that kind of thing, because one of the things in the field that's going to save you is you document this as you go, either through a script, if we're using Ansible or Puppet, the automation tools we talked about earlier in the course, some other tools. If you're following a good process and good documentation, if something goes wrong, you have something to go back to say, what did I do? Or what did Bob do when he did it? Because I wasn't there. So that's what we're also trying to build up here, is getting used to building that documentation. Because I've had many cases, as I told one manager when he interviewed me, so what do you think of documentation? And I looked him right in the eye and I said, I hate it. I hate doing it. I hate writing it. But it's the only thing that saves you at 3 o'clock in the morning when your memory's not working, or your coworker needs to know. And of course, the end result is you want to successfully meet the evaluation criteria and complete the task well. So what are the skills we're focusing on here? Well, a little bit of cloud infrastructure knowledge. So you're going to have, and a lot of this you've already seen, you already have. It's now starting to put some of the pieces together in a slightly different way. A little bit of web server administration experience. This can be a very deep topic all by itself. Multiple applications, virtual servers. There's a lot of things you could get into here, but again, let's get something working, and then you can start looking at more depth. Configuration management skills. So you're looking at, what do you need to do to configure that machine in the basics? What do you need to do to configure the web server at its basics, so that you've got something to work with? And possible scripting, and again, possible troubleshooting. So these are the skills we're looking at building or enhancing, so that you've got something to work with when you get out in the field. Any questions so far? No questions? Okay. So drilling down a little bit more. As it says here, we need to create an instance with HTTP access from the outside world. So in your assignments, in your homeworks, in your various labs, you have this information. How do you create an instance and set up a firewall so that HTTP can access it? If you don't open the firewall, of course, you can't access it. You can't reach it. That's the whole point of the firewall. So what do you need to do to adjust that? Again, reiterating, we're going to create this user SysEng. So what do you need to do to create him? And keep in mind as you go through all of these steps, if you get stuck, Google is your friend. Whether you're using the old-fashioned classic Google search, or attempting to use ChatGPT or some of those other AI tools, which can be useful in some cases. But still, you got to know what questions to ask, and what is your objective, right? If you don't know what your objective is, you can't ask intelligent questions. Don't be afraid to do that, though. If you're not sure what the question is, look at what you have or the error message that you have, put that into Google, see what comes back. If something you may get a lot of garbage back the first time around. You look at it and go, oh, that fourth one might help me. Then you go to it. I'll be honest, rarely do I go past the second page in Google searches, but it has happened. So sometimes you need to do a little reading and a little head scratching. But again, that's going to be very important in this role, is to be able to think on your feet and troubleshoot a problem. And of course, what do you need to do to install the web server? We're giving you a hint here on where you need to change things. For a lot of people, they don't deal with this file very often. Matter of fact, this is we're looking at predominantly an Ubuntu machine, and since most of your assignments are in Ubuntu, and most of my work's in CentOS, and even on the CentOS world, I had to go, where do I change that again? Because I don't do it that often. There's a lot of things that you'll do once or twice a year, and so you may have to Google it. So we're trying to give you a little bit of a hint here, and then of course you'll need to enable it and start it. Now what's the difference? Starting says initiate it right now. Make it run. Go. Enabling says when I reboot, automatically start it. So if you reboot the virtual machine, the instance, it'll automatically restart. Quick reminder on the instances: if you're done for the day, remember to shut it down. In this case, your work will be preserved, because it's a machine in its own right. So your work will be preserved. There's some things later where it won't be, and we'll discuss that when we get to them. So your work will be preserved, then you can come back to it. And so if you have to do this over a couple of nights, you won't lose anything, but you'll also, if you leave it running all day, even though it's not doing much, it's chewing up that free tier that you have, and you don't want to chew it up any faster than you have to. And then of course you need to then create and configure this index.html. in the appropriate place with the information we need. And that was the host name, what's its IP address, and what's its kernel version. So you may have to look to see how to get that information, as well as applying firewall rules, as we discussed a moment ago. What is it you need to do in Google to make this happen? If again, if you don't know, go back to your notes, hit Google. There's no shame in saying you hit Google. I've actually said that in interviews. What would you do if you ran into a problem you didn't know? Well, I'd make sure I understood what I was looking at. I would ask my coworkers, because if they're around, they may have seen it. Probably open a support ticket if we have support, in case it's a vendor problem. And then I'd Google it. And he was director, and he's like, really? You're saying that in an official interview that you'd Google it? It's like, if I said anything else, I'm lying. Because that's what you would do too, which he had to agree. So what do we need in the end, though? We need a screenshot of the web server running as the SysEng user, and a screenshot of the web browser connected to this machine to show the relevant information. So let's see, this machine. This is one of my VMs. So my user is different on this machine. So you'd have something like this that you would take a screenshot of, and provide that as part of your documentation. For what the web server is doing, get this out of the way. You'll want to update the file so that when you hit the web server, come back here, there we go. And make sure it's the right address. That you will have something like this. Doesn't have to be exactly this. So something like this that says, what's the name of the machine? This is my Fedora Server 1. My default address, the biggest thing we're interested in is, what are these interfaces? Or the okay, this is just showing the primary interface. Okay. So what is the address that's being used, and which version of the kernel? You've done your homework, you'll know this is a slightly old kernel because the machine needs to be upgraded, but still, we know it kernel. So we know the web server is working. We know the name of the machine. We know its actual address, but this is its internal address, and here, this is its external address. So we've confirmed we can get in, and which version of the kernel. So the developers could look at it and go, we need to upgrade that kernel. That's not right. Now, frequently in the build documentation, they'll tell you what version they need, or just whatever the default is. I work for Bank of America, and if you're building a new machine this month that's a Red Hat 9, the current version of the kernel that's in the Gold Master is what you get. If you say, I need an older one, the answer is no, because our bank and security is a big deal. Old kernels may have a security issue. Granted, new ones may have a security issue, but the hope is by staying up to current, you're not carrying around something that's been researched, documented, and people know how to attack. So we don't want that. So, but some companies, they don't need to be quite as current. Or a bank, you like to know your money's safe. So you would take a screenshot of both of those and put it into, my recommendation would be into a Google Doc. And then you can then get the link of the Google Doc and put that into the ticket as part of your documentation. And then we can look at it and go from there. Questions? Make sense? Okay. Some references that we're providing. Look at the documentation for lessons 4 and lessons 5. So there'll be a lot of information in there that'll help you. And again, you'll have to go through and say, okay, which one's relevant, which one's not, and which ones do I need to tweak. In the best of documentation that I've dealt with, as time passes, things change slightly. And I may look at a piece of documentation from 6 months ago and go, I need to adjust this parameter a little bit for some reason. And again, that's getting into some critical thinking and troubleshooting. And we provide a basic HTML template for what that web page is going to look like. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically that. Well, that would make the grading a little bit easier. But if the key is that relevant information is what I'm really going to want to see. If you don't bold it on top like this one does on mine, that I'm not going to worry about that. But I need to see the host, the address, and the kernel version. So again, when you run into a challenge, what is it you're going to tangle with? Well, you got the whole internet. You can guess installing a web server is nothing new. So when you do that, something doesn't make sense, take a look. Especially if you're using Ubuntu, that they have stacks of documentation, or Debian or Ubuntu, same animal. But if you're using Debian, maybe search for Ubuntu and Ubuntu Answer, and take advantage of the fact that Canonical, the people who put out Ubuntu, have a lot of documentation. If you're doing a CentOS machine, then you're going to want to look at Red Hat, CentOS, or Fedora documentation. And some things are easier to find in the Fedora documentation. Some are easier to find in the CentOS documentation. But take advantage of those. Those three are very, very close to each other, so that if it works in one, it's probably going to work in the others. Except for something that Red Hat may have that's a purchased product. And again, with Debian and Ubuntu, they're very tightly related. So Ubuntu is really Debian with a lot nicer presentation. So if you find if you're doing an Ubuntu or Debian machine, find the documentation for the other one of that pair, it's probably still valid. So go look at it. There's a lot of stuff on the internet. Like I said, you can use ChatGPT, but I found a lot of times for stuff in systems engineering, good old-fashioned Google frequently gets you the answer just as fast. That may change over time, but for today. And of course, review the course materials, and you're giving some pointers to look at, and see what makes sense out of that. Because, for example, in lesson 5, there's a lot of stuff there that, for this problem, you're not going to care about, not germane to what we're looking at. Don't get lost in those details. And of course, if you're stuck, reach out and get one-on-one tech mentor, because you can schedule that at your convenience. And of course, ask questions especially on the Thursdays. You can always put it in the ticket and kick it over to me. But again, there will be a little bit of a delay before I check it, because I work during the day, just like probably all of you do. But definitely take advantage of the time on Thursday. And since we'll probably have a little bit of time here today, if you have anything that's not making sense, now's the time to ask those questions up front, because when you get into a project, you're going to get some stuff where they're going to say, we need you to do this. And you're going to look at them and go, well, what's this? I need more information. I need more details. One ticket I just saw, we need more space added to our machines. Okay. How much space? Is there any particular format it needs to be? What name does file system do we need to put it in? Any of a number of those things. So don't be afraid to ask those questions in a project. And here, as you're going through it, if you see something that just does not make sense, ask that question. Any questions on what we've covered tonight? Any questions? Any thoughts? Let's get over at Jira. There we go. Come here. When you say that Ansible in G-Cloud is the preferred method, should be trying to do this all through one Ansible playbook. Actually, you don't need to use Ansible, but if you're going to do it in G-Cloud, you could do it either way. What I would probably do on the job myself is I would have one playbook that creates the user that gets run first, once the machine's deployed. One playbook that creates the user, and another one that installs and configures the web server, which that would then change the configuration file to be using that user. Can you put them in one playbook? Yeah. The reason, because these are kind of distinct tasks, or at least they are to me. If we wanted to use that playbook for creating the user for something else, it's separated. That's my thought on this type of a project, looking at it in a bigger environment. But what I do want to stress is, if Ansible is really blocking you, which some people, they blow right through it, and other people just will get stuck. So hopefully you'll be the one that can go right on through. But if you do get stuck and you're not sure what to do with Ansible, stop, back up, go through it and do it by hand if you have to. Because if nothing else, it may clarify your thoughts. And if it turns out that now you've got all the steps nailed down, and you want to go back and do it in Ansible, so you can say, look at this, I can say run that, and we're good to go. Even better. But if you're stuck, go back and do it by hand. document the steps, and then come back and figure out the playbook if you get, especially if you get stuck. So wants me to log back in. 1 second. You're welcome. Come on. And why is that not there? Okay, we're gonna do another way. I thought I updated my vault, but apparently I did not. Or maybe I should try the button. I was trying to log in directly when I should say log in with Google. Very few things in my personal life and in the bulk of my professional life do I use an outside thing to authenticate, like Google or Yahoo or any of those, Amazon, etc., Microsoft even. Yeah, I'm a little old-fashioned. I'm a bit of a control freak, but I'm a systems administrator, and as one person commented about me being paranoid, I reminded them they pay me to be so that they can sleep better at night. And I sometimes don't think about the fact that we just hit the login with Google button. So let's take a look at one of these here. So you're going to have a JIRA ticket in the to-do category assigned to you. So I just pick this one at random here, and it's going to have all the relevant information in it. But again, this is the preferred, as we were just talking, not mandatory. So if you get stuck, move on. The other hint I'm going to give you is when you have more than one ticket, if one ticket, you're just stuck. Instead of delaying everything else that's not dependent upon that, move on to the next one. At first, you'll only have one. Move on to the next one, because maybe you can knock it out and then come back to it. I've had some cases where I had deadlines where something was just messing me up, and I moved on to a ticket that really was low priority, but it gets you away from getting wrapped around the axle on the problem that's in front of you. Because there is definitely a lot to be said for walking away and taking a breather. They sleep on it, they go to lunch, to go get a cup of coffee, whatever you want to phrase it, to get away from the problem and not think about it. Because a lot of times when you're still thinking about it, you're not letting it go. One of the things, you spend a little time researching it, human beings are really good at what's called multi-level thinking, not multitasking. We're atrocious at multitasking. Multi-level thinking is basically something is important, and when you walk away, your subconscious, which is pertaining to your survival, is going to go, this is important, I'm going to keep working on it. And that's going on back here in the deep dark corners of your mind. And that's why you get the 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you know the answer. So step away if you can, but up front, you're only gonna have one thing. And it's going to go through the basic gist of what we had on the slides to give you something a little bit more concise what it is. And of course, documentation in the end, be it through an Ansible playbook. You did it by hand and documented what you did. You created a script and provided the script. So if you got playbooks and scripts, you're going to want to bring that into your documentation as part of your ticket. Or maybe a combination of those to document what you did, so that for example, I'm going to use the bank again because I work in one, and we get beat up about this every day and reminded every day that this is important. Is anytime we make a change, we need to document it, because one, we need to know it's changed in case something goes wrong, documented for future repetition, and three, in our case, auditors, the internal or external auditors, they want to be, if there's been a change of system, they say, this system changed on this date. What was done and who did it? Because that's part of the audit. It's part of the regulations we have to live under. But even if you don't work for a company that does that, that's still good, because if there's more than you, well, actually, even if it's just you, 6 months from now, trust me, you are not going to remember what you did today. And I'm pushing 60 now, so yeah, my memory is not as good as it used to be when I was younger, but just going back to the early days of my work, when I was in my mid to late 20s, not uncommon for me to go, I don't remember what I did last week on that, because there's so many things we deal with. So document, get in the habit of good documentation. And if worse comes to worse and you're not sure how to document it, trying to do it in Google Docs is cumbersome for you. I keep one of these on my desk at all times. I have one, this is the one here on my home desk, but I have one of these on my work desk. Actually, it lives in the, that one lives in the case with my work computer, since it goes back and forth, so that I can look up what I did. Any reminders I need, all that, so that I can write it down, forget about it, go on to the next thing, and when I need to look it up, I can. And again, remember to shut down your instances when you're not working, to preserve your free tier. It's really frustrating to be almost there and run out of free tier, and you need to throw dollars onto the account because you didn't shut things down. So please make sure you shut things down. It'll, try to save you some money here, and who doesn't like that? So again, when it's done, well, when you start working on it, remember to move it to in progress. When it's done, move it to in review. Here is where I pick it up. And what you should do is assign it to me so that I get a notification that there's something out there. Because, if it's a long weekend, I'll be honest, I had a 3-day weekend. I didn't check, I barely checked my email. I would just kind of glance at it, see if something jumped out at me, and enjoyed the weekend. But if I had seen something, that a student had assigned me a ticket for grading, and I said, maybe this evening I should do a little bit of grading. So do that. It'll help me get feedback to you faster. So please do that. But once I review it, of course, if it needs work, I'll kick it back to in progress, reassigning it back to you. If it's done, I'll simply move it to done. And when it comes back to you in progress, of course, I'll be assigning it back to you, so that I'm assuming, I don't know how it's configured in this case, that it will send you a notification saying the ticket is back in your court. I'm a big fan of having systems that let you know when something is put into your court, so that you don't have to keep checking everything all the time. If it'll remind you, and yes, sometimes nag you, while sometimes the nagging can be a little annoying coming from the system, because it's a computer, it's not human, it's not my spouse, it's not my cat, whatever, not my boss. But it helps you keep on track, especially again in systems engineering. We deal with a lot of things. We will deal with a lot of stuff that is major, like building machines, and especially if you're in a small company, you may be dealing with a lot of minor stuff. I need my password reset. I need toner for the printer, right? Where is the paper kept? All those minutia questions that, as the systems engineer, will come to you. Bigger companies, it's a little more segmented. Bank of America, I don't care about printers. I don't care about desktop support. I just care about servers. But a couple of companies back, I cared about printers. I cared about pulling cables through ceilings and all of that other stuff. Somebody's mouse didn't work, getting them a new mouse. All of those details. So having the system nag you is appropriate. So remember to reassign it in any system. Remember to assign it to whomever the next person in play is. If this was a group of tickets for a team, and you grab a ticket that's not assigned, then assign it to yourself, so that the rest of the team knows that you're working on it. No one will step on your toes. You won't step on their toes. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that point. Hopefully that'll be helpful in the long run. Okay. Any thoughts? Anything bubbling up before we start getting toward the end here? Oh, and Cameron, to your point, yeah, bit word on the phone can be a little temperamental, and that's on an Android. Okay, we got a few minutes here, and I don't see any questions popping up. What I would recommend is, I'm here for you. Take a little time to look at the assignment. Look at some of the notes that are in it to see if there's anything useful, especially lessons 4 and lessons 5. The basic HTML template is in the referenced in the ticket. But again, look at lessons 4 and lessons 5. And then look at your assignment and see if it's making sense, or if you need any other additional questions asked. Except for now, yeah, the HTML basic is this is the template right here. So please take some time to look at it and let me know. And like I said, I'm here for you. So I'll give you some time to look at that. Let's see, can error my SSH key, and every time I go to overwrite it, does give me errors. What is the error you're getting for the SSH key? Yeah, take a look at that image you just sent me. I see it. Let's see. External address cannot be found. Let's see. Listen, Joomla. Okay, it's saying Joomla, lesson 8, Joomla already exists. Consider installing NumPy. That's interesting. Let's see, failed to connect to back end. Port 22. Is the machine booted? Okay, cool. Yeah, the classic, start with the simple questions and build your way up. Sage. Build a Teamwork session. Why is it not fetching the resource? Okay. Already exists. If you go into the web interface, can you see what its IP address is from there? So you don't see an IP address, huh? Under the next to the instance, is there a green? Does it show a green ball? Let's see, compute engine, instances. So, yeah. So what you'll be looking at, first of all, make sure there's a lot of ways you can do it in the interface as well, but sometimes it's just easy to just jump in here, take a fast look, and done. So, do you have this running? And of course, here are the NICs, the addresses, the internal IP, who's one we're probably most concerned with here. If you can try SSH to directly to the internal IP address and see if that works as well. And when I was working earlier, I obviously forgot to shut mine down too. So you might look at that and see if and see if you can log in with the address, the private address directly, and see if that gets you anywhere. Like I said, this fast way to just look it up. So, for example, all of my copies of my machines, here's my internal addresses. And once you're logged in, it's under the Pancake Stack, Compute Engine, VM instances. And it'll bring you to a page that looks like this. Okay. Give that a try. Let me know what you find. We've got about a minute if anybody has any other questions. Getting 2 server IP addresses, huh? 172, 1801, 172, 1704. Those would be external addresses. You don't have a 10 dot something? Hmm. 172. Okay. Okay. Those are okay. Those are internal addresses. Okay. Never mind. I misremembered. We'll take a moment here since the topic came up. These are referred to as what's called CIDR blocks, but basically any address that starts with 10, any address that's in this range, 172.16.00 through 172.31, 255, 255, and 192.168, whatever the last two digits are non-routable on the internet, so they would be considered private. So kind of file that away. So you're seeing two private addresses. Do you have two interfaces on that machine? Do you know? We may have to dig into that machine a little bit. Unfortunately, we don't have time here tonight. I would say reach out to support right away to look at that machine with you. And if they can't figure out what it is, bring it back to me on Thursday rather. Wow. And I'll see what I can do. Any one of them should be able to help you. Yeah. Yeah, do that, and if they can't get it ironed out for you, bring the question back here on Thursday, and we'll see what we can do. Because Thursday is going to be not much of this stuff talking and more helping you and working with you through issues. You're welcome. Okay, with that, I think we'll wrap it up this evening. But again, if you have any questions, reach out to support first, since you can probably get them a little quicker. And any other questions, they're not answered by the time we have our session on Thursday, feel free to bring them here and we will see what we can do. So I hope you have a good evening and a good couple of days. And maybe I can brag about having a new car on Thursday. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.